everybody, and welcome to Moms on a Mission. We recently had Mike Lindell on, and he was sharing all about MyPillow and his special products like sheets and pillows and towels and robes and so much more. If you are blessed by what you're hearing and you find this show to be helpful at all in any way, please go to mypillow.com, type in the code MISSION to save up to 80% off now. Go to mypillow.com, type in code MISSION to save up to 80% off, and we would greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at moms@momsonamission.net. That's moms@momsonamission.net, and please follow us on your favorite platform. Well, today we have the honor of having back some guests, some of our favorite guests. So Mr. Post and Max Woods, they were on before, just talking about Augustine Christian Academy and their experiences there as it relates to their different roles, student and faculty, and what that was like. But I wanted to have them back on so that we could talk about the curricula used at Augustine Christian Academy and why that's used, because it is quite different than obviously the government schools and then even other Christian schools and different Christian curricula that schools could choose and utilize. So I wanted to have them back on to really ask them these questions from each of their unique perspectives and how this curricula and how it's been taught, how it's affected the students. Max just graduated and now he is in college.
Indeed.
Yes, we pulled him away tonight from his studies to come and do this interview. So we're so grateful. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So I first want to ask you, the curricula that is used at Augustine Christian Academy, what would you call that?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, no, you can go for it. I was just turning to look.
Yeah, he's like, what is he going to say?
It's a cornucopia, actually. There are many different authors, different publishers that we use. One of the things I most enjoyed about ACA when I went there is that we didn't feel that we were just an Abeka school or a Bob Jones school, but instead we felt that we had the freedom to choose the best particular group of books or materials that we could for a particular class. And so we're constantly reviewing that. In fact, we're redoing our vertical alignment now because we've made some other changes along the way as we find better materials to use. They're tools. And so we're like anyone who's a craftsman. You look for the best tools that you can use. And sometimes a tool gets worn out or a new one comes along and you say, I can do much more with that tool. And so the textbooks are a tool. They're not the whole matter of the teaching. In fact, the teacher is the key in the classroom, I think. But having a good curriculum that you use and don't have to constantly excuse or explain in another way is very helpful. So we try to choose the appropriate materials, but we know that presenting a Christian worldview and teaching our students to read very broadly is our job as teachers to do that. And so rarely do you just say, well, this is just the textbook or the only one, especially in a history class.
Yes.
I had a couple texts that we used, didn't I, Matt?
Oh, quite a few. Yes, it was wonderful.
A few.
I mean, I like the way you're explaining, the broad range of things that we'd studied. Because I remember as a student having some of these conversations. I know another way that classically minded teachers explain it is like the Latin word omnibus, which kind of means all encompassing, because as you go through the classical model of education, you're really broadening your understanding of the world and different connections that you're making. One of the things I was most appreciative of as a classically educated student was being able to go through some of the primary source material from the time, where it wasn't just a textbook narrative saying, and then this happened at the time. There's a lot of time spent as students engaging with a raw source of text of, okay, this was something that was written during the time. And what do you guys think about it? And let's have like I've talked about the Socratic seminar or Socratic circle of let's all talk about what your impressions were just from reading this thing from this time period.
Yes. And to us, that's extremely vital, because if you're not reading the words from the people who were there, who experienced it in a primary source, then you're getting someone's interpretation or someone's filter. And we have to be very cautious of that.
So what would you say to a school that would be maybe teaching on Columbus Day? That's coming up. So Columbus has been given a bad rap. There have been lots of things like he's committed genocide and things of that nature have been said about him. How would you take that subject on, for example?
Well, one of the things we do is read Columbus himself. Why did he say he was sailing? Of course, he wasn't trying to prove that the world is round. He instead had a mission and a purpose. We also look at what was written about him from other sources at the time. And we try to come up with a balanced view. No one's perfect. And I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they put someone in history on a pedestal, and then there's nowhere for them to go but down. On the other hand, we then, it seems in this culture, to try to destroy anyone who's done any evil. Well, who will stand? There's no one left. And so we try to find that balance, and we're careful to say, these are the things they did that we can emulate, and these are the things that were wrong, and use the word of God as our judge, not an individual, not a particular hero. And I think in that we can find something to emulate in most people we study, but we can also learn the lessons from the mistakes they made.
Is it hard to find primary sourced information?
It takes a little bit of work, but it's not really that difficult. Most people who write textbooks, at least some of the better ones, are accessing those materials, and they have a list of them in their back, in the back of their book. The funny thing that happens is that sometimes an author of a new history book will simply repeat something you read from some other author who repeated it from some other author, and they don't go back to the original sources themselves. And that's why we have to teach our students to do that. In fact, one of the books that we studied was Inventing the Flat Earth by James Russell. And he documents where the idea that Columbus was trying to prove the world was round because everybody thought it was flat in his day, where that error came from, and how often it was repeated in textbooks until about 50 years ago. So even when I was a child, we were being taught that. And yet that's not in any of the original documents at all.
Wow. So you're saying it's not that hard to find primary sourced information?
No, you have to work though. And that's that evil word. It's hard work. Because you have to go back and say, is that a credible source? And are there other sources that, in fact, we learned a little acronym that we use.
Oh,
for evidence.
man.
Do you remember that? Okay, now I'm putting Max on.
Come on, Max, no pressure.
So
The world is watching.
if we're looking at a particular piece of evidence, we use the word prop. And so was it a primary or secondary source? Did the author have a reason to lie? When we looked at Captain John Smith, who was hired by England to make people want to come to the colonies. And so he would brag about catching 1,000 fish in one day. Oh, well, he may have had a little reason to stretch the truth there. And O was for other sources that collaborate that. And then P was at a public or private statement, because often when we make a statement in public, we're trying to impress someone, but what we write in our personal diary is what we really feel or think.
It's almost like you're detectives.
I would say as a student, that was something we were taught going into the humanities, is you're really trying to search for truth. Because if you're just taking what's given to you, if you're not putting in the work, then what you're given is what you're going to get. But as the student, if you are pursuing goodness, truth, and beauty, then you put in the work to learn the truth. And that often takes looking through the sources, that takes checking the footnotes and seeing what were the original words said. And what do those words mean in the proper context?
When we first started the school, some of our students who hadn't been used to that began to say things like, just tell us the answer so we can write it down and memorize it for a test. And they didn't want to have to go through wading through all of this material. But they changed in that. And you asked, I think at one point we were talking about whether or not students take to that. And I think once they begin to see the richness in this, they do like it. They realize they're learning something that has meaning and value, and it helps them make connections from the past to the present. And that's important for them to know. Otherwise, we're not really learning. We're not really thinking.
And so what we were talking about earlier, when I was just sharing what I would like to talk about today, that how it's so important to teach students how to think and not what to think. And I think that was a primary example of kind of being spoon-fed. Here's the question, here's the answer, memorize it, and then they forget about it. And what really have they learned 5 years down the road, or even 30 minutes down the road after the test is over? Let's be honest, right? So have you been in classical education most of your life?
Since about the 5th grade. So
okay,
it's been a large bulk of my educational experience.
Because I was wondering, for kids who come from the normal way to the school that teaches them how to think, I wonder if there's probably a little bit of resistance, because it is so much more work to learn how to think when they're having to discover things on their own. You're working hard, you're finding out information. And then when there's a little bit of sweat involved, there must be a bit more ownership.
Indeed, there is. When they realize or they discover something, even if it's something someone else discovered a long time ago, for them, it's fresh and new. And that's exciting because they know they've moved beyond that memorize, spit out, forget kind of thinking. And so they know this means something and this has value. And then they can take that same feeling to researching other things in their lives. We've been talking about history, but we like to do that in science as well.
Yes.
Science isn't an accumulation of known facts. It's a lot of theories and ideas that we think work, models that we believe are working, but they constantly have to be tested over and over and over. And so we're trying to train our students to learn that method of testing, of asking questions, of making careful observations, and then coming to a conclusion that maybe what we thought was correct and maybe it's not. Maybe we're learning something new, knowing that the ultimate truth is going to come from God. But we're going to see how close we can get to it in our own observation and thinking.
Yeah, well, and even in some of the science classes I remember taking at ACA, one of my favorite experiences from doing those labs was, you answer, okay, procedure, hypothesis, conclusion. This is the data of what happened. This is maybe the sketch of what the cell looked like under the microscope. But the last two questions were always, so what, and was there something that was revealed to you? Because at the end of the day, you spat out all the right information, you interpreted the data, but how did that help you grow as a person? How does that help you have a larger scope of how you see the world or how you understand truth? Because if you just spit it out and forget it, well, what have you really gained from that? What do you take away from that lab?
Yes.
I might have heard that from another ACA graduate about so what is asked and why, and just when the thinking isn't quite clicking it, then the why is asked again and again. Yeah. And I've noticed that for kids who aren't used to this, it creates a little bit of angst and discomfort when they're not able to spit out the answer right away and they're having to struggle. Like there's a bit of a struggle, which I think would probably be a good thing.
It is, but it's also, to me, why it's very important that a student be in a safe environment where they're asked to learn. Children are survivors, and if you put them in an environment where they don't feel safe, they'll figure out what they have to do to get through that without necessarily learning anything. But when I ask my students to learn something, I'm asking them to become vulnerable, to let me mess around a little bit with what they think they know. And they're not going to do that if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel that I'm going to treat them with respect, that I'm going to appreciate the struggle that they're going through, that I'm going to help them be successful and believe in their ability to be successful. And that's extremely important. And I think as parents, we have to know that. When we put someone in our child's life and say, learn from them, we have to know that our child is going to feel safe with that individual. And that's why, I was saying that the curriculum is a tool, but the teacher's the key. Because it's in that relationship with the teacher that a student realizes how far they can go. Now, ultimately, we want them to be able to study on their own. And Max is an excellent example of that. Max always studied well beyond anything that we were expecting him to do. But it's also important for my students to feel that they're safe with me. And then they're going to take a risk that you were talking about. They're going to take that chance to think through something and see what it means to their lives. And that's where real learning takes place.
Wow, I didn't even really think about that till you said that, the vulnerability factor. I guess because I went to a public school, I see the curricula being so powerful because if you don't have the right teacher at the helm, able to, if it's not, a Christian trusted curricula, if they're not able to weed out the inaccuracies and the revisionist history or revisionist science or what have you, if they're not able to weed that out, then it's taught as truth. And I mean, that's a bit of a concern. How do you vet teachers to make sure that they're capable in aligning with your worldview?
Well, that's interview process, trying to find out where's their calling, where's their heart. We have developed for each of our departments our philosophies, our philosophy of history, of math, of science. And we're asking each of our teachers to go through that. Do you agree with that? Are you lined up with that? How is what you're going to teach fit with that particular philosophy? And so that's part of the interview process and doing that. And then also watching what's going on with the teachers in the classroom. And our students are very good judges of that. They will often tell you, I think there's something wrong.
Oh, they will.
There's something there.
Well, especially when you raise them with the classical model of how to think, not just what to think, is sometimes we tend to get in the teacher's head of, is that is that how I would teach it to a student? I don't know. But yeah, we're really taught to analyze and take things from an objective standard of, oh, okay.
Which I think is brilliant, because these are people of authority and you're respectful, but yet you're still critically thinking and saying, something's not right, and not just taking it as gospel because they're in authority over you.
And that's important for them to be able to do that. Scripture says, be not many teachers, I think, because of that, the greater judgment that we have. But I think you've also touched on the key. We do want good curricula. However, we teach our students to read broadly. So sometimes we give them a book that's coming from a totally unchristian worldview, because our key is not to just give them only the Christian viewpoint. We know that they're going to go out in the world and they're going to hear all sorts of ideas. And so instead, we want to teach them how to analyze what the author's saying. What does it mean? Is it true? According to the Word of God. So if you give them the skills for analyzing what they read, then they can read extremely broadly. And that's how you produce Pauls, who on Mars Hill could use their own poets and their own philosophers to show them the truth of Christ. And so that's part of the goal of classical education. So you'll read some people who are not always appropriate for church socials and PTF meetings. We put it that
But
way.
you present that once the students are firmly rooted and they have a strong Christian worldview and a biblical worldview, and they know how to use that lens and apply that lens to all information, including information that's not necessarily correct.
Yes.
But if they don't have that lens in place, I would think that would be very difficult to present that and say, okay, now interpret that. And they have no lens.
And you're on your own. No,
Yeah.
that's the job of the teacher then to say, now, come on, it's just a safe place for us to look at those things.
I mean, Augustine Christian Academy school motto is in luce tua lucem videmus, which in the English means in thy light we see light, from the Psalm. And what we mean in saying that is we're going to study a lot of different things, but in order to understand truth, it needs to be viewed through the lens of God's word.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember a number of times we'd be handed these ideas of, okay, analyze this text and what this person is, what case this person is making. And if it's misaligned with your Christian values, then respond to it and say, give biblical evidence and provide a Christian response to this idea or to this concept, this argument.
It really makes me think of the scripture that says, study to show yourself approved, a workman who has no need of shame, rightly dividing the word of truth. And I think that you would apply that to the world and apply the lens. We're used to just thinking that we know what we believe, but I really, the studying doesn't stop once I hate to tell you this. I graduated from ORU and I was like, yes, no more reading. And I didn't read for a bit, but then I started reading again. But just to be a lifelong learner, I feel like Augustine Christian Academy probably encourages that too, just to be curious and to want to discover truth everywhere, not just in the classroom with Mr. Post or with another teacher.
It becomes fun then when you're doing it.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
I think it was Mark Twain who said, work is what a body's obliged to do and fun is what a body's not obliged to do. So when you take that you have to away, then you have the opportunity for it to be fun.
How on earth do you make history fun?
I mean, when Mr. Post teaching it, you don't really have to try very hard. Like I would hate to miss one of those classes.
I've heard that, and I'm just so curious since I've never been in one. I'm curious how you can make history fun.
Well, I don't know. I just enjoy it myself. That's the beginning point. You know,
That's a really important beginning point, I'll say.
It is extremely important because someone said it's what's caught, not taught. I think it's both, but in a sense, you have to have that enthusiasm yourself. You have to love what you're teaching and love the students that you have, and then it communicates. But also be willing to see that the students have great ideas themselves. They want to know something that is worthwhile, and so you dig in. And I have a lesson plan, and I know what I want to cover that class. I know what I need to cover, but sometimes the lesson goes this way. And it's because the students are suddenly hungry and that's touched on something. And I realize maybe we need to go that way because that's what they're hungry for right now.
Wow.
And someone said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so sometimes you have to let them say, I'm ready now to understand this, and then go with it.
I always appreciated that going into those classes because I could feel a sense of reciprocated respect that as my students and I were curious about things, we could actually discuss them in class with you and with each other and ask honest questions and just talk about them, not necessarily like there was a textbook response, but that we were able to see from different points of view, okay, where we agreed, where we disagreed, where we didn't even know really the answer, and where we could see through the lens of God's word to see truth together.
And to be able to do that while respecting each other is what makes education so exciting. And the sad thing, and I think in our culture, is that we've decided that if you have a different view than I do, then we're just going to leave that alone. And we're not going to argue or discuss it, because then you're stepping on my toes. When in reality, we should be able to throw these ideas out and wrestle with them together and come to a meaning of the truth. Even if we don't end up agreeing, at least we have a respect for why we believe what we do. But I think so many people have no idea why they believe what they do. Everything's based on a feeling, an emotion, a soundbite they heard somewhere, and they don't want to put it under the lens of examination. And Christians can be that way too. Don't make me have to tell you why I believe what I do. But that's indeed what we're told in 1 Peter, I believe it is. Be ready to give an answer to every man that asks you, a reason for the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. So we should be ready to share that.
Is that something you all do in class? Like,
oh, yeah, I mean, depends what you ask. I remember having to take apologetics with at ACA, and I mean, really, I should say, get to take it. It was such a privilege to be able to understand why we believe what we believe, because I realize I talk to a lot of people who don't understand the why, and the why is really important when you're launched out into a world of disagreement and a lot of ideas.
Yes.
So I think that is so critical, because I think that piece is missing in regular, government school or Christian school, where they're not using the classical education model. They do have debate classes and things like that, but I just think this is probably incredibly unique to the Christian faith when you're doing apologetics and things of that nature, and that becomes kind of normal as you're older, like sophomore, junior, senior, and you're starting to debate and things of that nature. I think that would also be critical when you graduate. I'd like to go to this question. When you graduate and you know not just what you believe, but why you believe it, and you're truly anchored in your relationship with the Lord and in the Word, and then you go out and you have those roots to withstand the winds of different doctrine and things of like that. So as you've gone to college, have you noticed a difference in, and I know you haven't been there long, but have you noticed a difference in your education, whether it's when you're discussing the Lord or in your classes or anything of that nature?
So I think my biggest takeaway, having gone from one Christian school to another, so I graduated Augustine Christian Academy, and I'm currently studying engineering at Oral Roberts University as well. But a key thing that I've noticed from my educational background, less so my doctrinal background as of right now, still getting situated, but I do notice in the classes is a lot of students say if they need to be there for attendance, they'll just be like typing up another assignment. They'll be distracted. Some even like watch movies and other things. But I try to really stay engaged because I know why I'm there. A lot of people, when they ask, why am I here? They'll say, well, because I have to be here for a credit, for a general education, for a thing. So I can do whatever I want, but I don't need to actually get this education part. I just need to check the box. But I know why I'm there is to learn. And it's kind of a different experience for me, for people to have the liberty to say, do I choose to learn or do I choose to do what I want? And so I think that discipline's been very formative in letting students pursue and discuss and find the answer to why we do what we do with education.
And, I feel like in this discussion kind of format that the classes are in, a kind of like you talked about the Socratic method before, where there's a dialogue. I think that level of engagement, I guess kids could not join in or what have you, but I feel like it's normal for all the students to join in and converse, and it's normal to have ownership, so that when you do go to college, it's probably just normal for you to be involved and to pay attention and to own that class and your time in there.
I can remember some of our earlier graduates coming back to speak with us and saying that they were in a large class with a professor, and the professor makes a point, and they raised their hand and said, what about this? And they said, everybody looked at me like, you can do that? And they were just very comfortable with that because they were used to being able to interject in whatever we were studying. So,
well, because something I noticed that goes along with that, the sense of confidence and rhetoric and being able to present yourself well, being able to speak well, is at the other side of that, a lot of people, especially from my generation, are really scared of, well, what if I'm wrong? But I know that at ACA, I was taught, well, you need to give an answer, which means sometimes, a lot of times I learned my answer was wrong. And I had to be comfortable presenting an answer that might be wrong. And people could give me reasons for it was wrong, and I could change my perspective or change my argument. And that, I think, is almost more important than having the correct answer from someone else.
Wow.
Is being able to present an answer that's maybe not perfect, but which you can learn more from by putting yourself out there and making those mistakes and adjusting.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant. I want to ask you, since I graduated from ORU and I had to do a senior paper. It was incredibly stressful. We had to have a chapter done. I can't remember, but maybe every couple of weeks. I know a few all-nighters were in there, and I ate Smarties one time because I ran out of food and it was like 3 a.m. And I remember I had eaten so many Smarties that I was typing and my hands were like shaking. So I went to bed and got up early and finished it. But it felt like a thesis. I mean, it was really intense. I had never done anything like that before. I'm very grateful, but apparently you have already done something like that at ACA. And is that common in high school to do something like that? Have you heard from?
I haven't heard that that's very common. In fact, I know one public school teacher I talked to said very few, if any, would graduate if that were a requirement. But I feel very privileged to have gone through that experience, especially that being important in preparation for college. Because now that I'm there, a lot of the humanities is, write papers on this, now write papers on that. And having scaled what was to me a high school summit, was I'm like, whoa, this is something I can be comfortable with, is presenting myself and knowing how to speak and knowing how to write, because from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and we're just able to share and join in the great conversation. I feel very privileged and blessed at having that opportunity.
Could I ask Max if you would share some of the things you did to gain information for your particular thesis you were doing, because I was impressed with the amount of work that he did.
Well, I can tell you the first place a lot of us went to was the internet, but I didn't trust that a whole lot, especially since I was talking about things like artificial intelligence. People have a lot of things to say on the internet, but that doesn't make it true. But I'll tell you, if you're looking for wisdom, is you talk to people who know what they're talking about. So I went and tried to interview people. And one interview led to like 2 or 3 more interviews, led to a few more interviews. And I got to talk to people who understood the issue that I was looking at. And Mr. Post was one of those people I interviewed, and interviewed him about education. And so I got to talk to people and discuss with them their points of view. I got to see how they not just analyzed the same data that I was analyzing, but how they saw it, how they applied it to the issues that I was addressing. And I got to hear from so many different points of view what their concern was, how they were seeing truth, how they were seeing the problems of, well, I mean, in my case, it was education and technology and things like that. But I developed this broader sense of understanding, really a broader sense of understanding research and what it means to sort after information. I wasn't just trying to get information. I was trying to search for truth, trying to discern how people see the world differently. And that was very helpful for me.
So is ACA the only school that you know of in Oklahoma that does something like that? It just seems pretty incredible.
No, I don't think so. I can't name particularly ones that do, but I know some others do. And I know in the classical model, that's not uncommon.
Okay.
But it's a great exercise.
Yeah.
How long was your paper?
My paper, I think it was at least 15 pages. Or maybe that was the minimum, but it was pretty lengthy. I mean, it was something I was really proud of. I think each section had to be at least 3 to 5 pages long. There are about 4 or 5 sections.
Wow.
So it was not easy.
And then you had to make a presentation with PowerPoint to your class.
Correct. Multimedia.
And then you had to defend your position before a 3-teacher panel.
Yeah, well, and our own classmates. There's levels of peer review and editing and troubleshooting, honestly, of people being able to ask us hard questions, and then for me to sit down and go, oh, okay, I should have an answer for that, or I should adjust my point, things like that. That's all really important in the process of facing scrutiny. Like I said, being able to present an idea that might not be perfect, but working to mold it and shape it to perfection, being able to adjust things when maybe I'm wrong. That was huge in senior thesis.
Now, I know I didn't have that in high school. And in my school, there was actually a senior comp class. And this was in California. And when I went into the classroom, the teacher had taken out all of the desks and put in couches and carpet. and somehow had convinced the administration that she needed to spend that year talking about relevant topics. We discussed the war in Vietnam. We listened to the rock opera Tommy. We talked about women's lib. We didn't write a paper all year. And we thought, wow, this is pretty cool, And then I went to college. My freshman year, wrote my first paper, and my professor said, go to the writing lab. You need to learn to write. And I was humiliated and realized that I was in trouble and I had to learn to write. But I think that's not as atypical today. I think so many times we want to discuss current issues, but don't teach students how to communicate clearly and effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our job as teachers.
Yeah. Your paper, is it digital? Could I put that in our comment?
Oh yeah, if you want me
I'd
to
like to
send
link
a
it.
copy, I've got.
Yeah.
I think I've still got the document for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also was able to have the satisfaction of getting it fully printed out and physical and everything. And because you have to do that for the final project. Is I think some students would even have it available at their presentation. Was if you wanted to read any of it or certain questions, that really helped for me to be able to say you can read more about that in my senior thesis, because some of the points people would make were excellent. But I said, I've actually written a lot more about that and provided more ample evidence in my paper. And yeah, it really helps to have like the brief the presentation itself is pretty brief compared to the bulk of work you've done in the paper. But it's such a capstone expression of being able to say, this is how we can communicate with rhetoric, with everything we've been taught about art and science and math and humanities. I mean, it all kind of converges into this one body of work that encapsulates learning.
How could people get a hold of ACA? They can get online and go and Google Augustine Christian Academy.
They can, absolutely. ACATulsa.org is an easy way to get to the website.
Okay.
You can call our number, 918-832-4600. Someone will call them back, give them information. We love to have students come and take a tour or shadow for a day. That often helps them find out whether or not they're comfortable at ACA. And usually they are.
Yeah.
Because the students will overwhelm them.
Yes.
with acceptance.
With acceptance, a little bit, yes.
Oh, I think that's great. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today, Moms on a Mission. Thanks for sharing your experience and your heart and your wisdom and knowledge. I think that this is such a unique school and learning environment. And Max, thank you for sharing how it's been for you and what you've learned. I just think it's amazing. So thank you guys. We might want to have you come back down the road. We can see how you're doing at ORU and what you're learning and how it's different even as you travel further down the road there. So thank you both so much. And thank you all so much for listening. Again, email us with any comments or questions, or if you have any for Mr. Post or Max, email us at moms@momsonamission.net. That's moms@momsonamission.net. And then you can check us out on our website at momsonamission.net. And please follow us on your favorite platform. And thanks for listening. In light of recent bank volatility and skyrocketing inflation, diversification is a must. That's why I use my good friend Andrew Sorcini at Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Beverly Hills Precious Metals makes it so easy to diversify. I personally ordered some silver and it arrived on my doorstep just a few days later. They make it so easy. And if you're not ready to do that and you just want to ask a few questions, they're there for you too. I personally got some silver and also am rolling over some of my IRA. You can actually roll over your IRA and have it be backed by silver and gold. So if you don't have any extra money to invest in silver and gold, rolling over a 401k or an IRA, or even part of it, if you just want to try it at first, just for a little bit, you can do that as well. So go to bh-pm.com today and ask all your questions. You can connect with somebody. And like I said, you can just get some information at first if you want and pray about it, and then get back with them to roll over part of your IRA or all of it, or order some gold and silver. That's bh-pm.com. and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hey, everybody. Did you know that recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed? Parasites are actually the cause of many health problems such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health. Moms on a Mission encourages you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all natural detoxification and fights inflammation. And the supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively. I know after I took Full Moon Protocol, I had more energy. To order your Full Moon Protocol today, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. According to leading sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle getting a good night's rest. That's why Moms on a Mission loves MyPillow. MyPillow makes amazing pillows, sheets, mattress toppers, robes, towels, literally almost everything you need for a good night's sleep. They also make dog beds for your dogs. So by going to mypillow.com, typing in the code MISSION, you not only receive a high quality product, but you're supporting Moms on a Mission and this podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you agree with it, you believe in it, and you want to support Moms on a Mission, then go to mypillow.com today and order some high quality products and just type in the code MISSION at checkout and you can save up to 66% off. That's mypillow.com, code MISSION.
Since 2014, Organic Body Essentials has offered clean, simple, certified organic skincare. Our organic face-to-feet and federally compliant hemp and pet products are manufactured under USDA and FDA guidelines. Our products are inspired by God using plants He created. In Ezekiel 47:12, it says, "The fruit is for food and the leaves for healing." We believe in the power of God to heal, so we pray over our products and for our customers. Our therapy in a bottle approach has been widely received, and our customers' testimonials continue to inspire us. You can find us at organicbodyessentials.com and obe.organicbodyessentials.com. Please feel welcome to reach out with questions. Use coupon code MISSION at checkout for a discount. Thank you for your support by using MISSION at checkout to benefit Moms on a Mission and their quest to reestablish traditional values in our education system and empowerment for a healthy lifestyle.